Hi, Jem.
Hiya,
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. So this
Dull here.
pardon?
The weather's very dull here.
Oh, well, it's really hot here. I went for a run
Is
last
it?
night. It was 35 or 36 degrees, but it felt like, on the app, on the Apple weather,
Yeah, yeah.
it says feels like, and it felt like 50. And honestly, I nearly died. It was so bloody hot.
Did you have the aircon on as well?
That was outside because I went for a
Oh,
run.
right, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it is. I've been putting the aircon on because it's been hot recently.
Yeah, it's coming up to the peaks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's the talk about today then?
So tonight it's talk. We obviously wanted to discuss privilege because of the recent events that have been happening, and
Mm-hmm.
we are not really aware, like, of how privilege kind of affects us or how we've seen it show up. So we just thought we'd have a discussion on what we think privilege is, how we've seen it in our lives or in other people's lives kind of show up, and what we can do to use our own privilege in kind of like a positive way. um,
Yeah.
yeah, so this is just a discussion about just about privilege, and it's not that, like, we don't know everything about it because it's a very extensive topic. So we're just going to discuss it from our points of view.
Okay.
So Jem, what would you describe privilege as?
Well, when probably a few years ago, I probably thought that privilege would mean like rich, posh people that have loads of money, like wealthy people.
Yes.
And I thought that's really just what it meant. That's what I did think it meant.
Okay, so you just thought it meant you had to be privileged, you had to be rich and posh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah, wealthy.
and wealthy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically wealthy, probably.
And so now over the years, like as you've grown up and stuff, like what has that definition changed for you? Like, do you think it's something different now?
Yeah, basically now I realise that it's privilege can play out in loads of different areas and different ways, but it's still obvious that most people with what's been going on seem to think that being privileged means that they've had an easy life.
Yes, yes, I've seen so many comments like that. People have commented, I'm not rich. I've had problems. How am I privileged? Like, how could I possibly be privileged? And I kind
Mhm.
of get that from our previous definitions of privilege. I would have
Yeah,
had exactly the same reaction, thinking, but how? Like, it's not like I grew up in a rich family. I didn't know anyone that could kind of get me the job that I wanted. It's like you have
yeah.
to work for everything yourself.
Mhm.
Nothing kind of came easy.
Mhm.
But yeah, like you say, that when you kind of delve into it a bit deeper and you do research and you listen to different speakers and you read books and things, you kind of realize that it's about having an advantage, but it doesn't mean that you have to be the most advantaged in the world. So it's
Yeah,
just about having an advantage over someone else because of a particular trait.
yeah,
Something that you have makes you have more of an advantage than someone else.
yeah.
Um,
So, for example, like if someone's got a disability,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
So this is what I was talking
So,
to you about the other night when I was trying
yeah,
to, like, grasp my head around
yeah,
privilege, and I was trying to figure out, like, how it works and
yeah,
how because I think this is what I've realised as well. If you are the privileged one, you find it more difficult to see your own privilege.
Yes, because you have probably got other pains and stuff that make you feel like, I think it's like is it like scared of admitting that because it gives away power? I don't know, like makes you feel like, I don't know what it is. What is it when people get sort of like a bit butthurt when they get said that you've got a privilege? It's like it's an insult. They take it as an insult.
Yeah.
Like with you, I'm obviously with your disability.
Yeah.
I'm privileged. I was born privileged as an able-bodied person.
Yeah.
And then obviously with you, but I don't take that as an insult, like a bit of a ooh, like, I don't know what is it that makes people feel so touchy about that. I don't know actually.
For me, when people have said, like, if someone says to me, you have privilege, sometimes I could feel that that somewhat that could not come across, but that could feel to me like someone is telling me that you've basically been given everything on a plate.
Yeah.
So as if and it could hit a nerve in you to say that you've not really worked for what you've got, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
When
because they're so in their own bubble. In their own bubble of what they think their worldview. So when they're thinking that, no one wants to be told that they're not. Do you think it's because they think they're being told they're not a nice person?
I don't know.
I don't know. It's funny, isn't it?
I don't know with the word privilege. Possibly, because possibly it could also, people could feel as if they're being as if they're being judged as they think they're superior to other people. So then they could see that as, well, that would make me egotistical and judgmental of other people. So that would make, that's not a good thing. So then I don't want to be privileged because I'm not that type of person. But that's not what it means. Like, it doesn't mean that you think you're superior, because
so that's like entitlement. That's like if someone said you're entitled.
Yes.
But privilege is different, isn't it? But it seems like a lot of the comments, people will be saying like, sort of like, it's like they're defending themselves against something that they don't need to defend against because it's there. It's like, I mean, I've had these discussions with men who've said, when you try and explain to them about male privilege, it's met with defense, like very defensiveness, and it's like you're trying to, I don't know why, but it's like they don't want to admit that there's a sort of privilege there.
I don't know. I'm trying to think what comes up in my mind when I hear the word privilege. If someone says to me, Kelsey, you're privileged, I honestly, when I hear that word, I think spoiled brat. I'm like, no, I'm not a spoiled brat. And you want to defend that. Defend yourself because you obviously have when you're defending it, you obviously have a negative connotation with the word privilege. And honestly, when I was thinking about it just then, that is the first word that came to mind, spoiled brat. That privileged, to me, in my mind, must equal spoiled brat in some way. I don't know why that word came up, but it was there.
Yeah, I think especially with like sometimes when people have been like maybe in their own bubble and they've got their own pain and they've got their own stuff going on, they've probably not really been able to look at what's happening maybe in the world, because they've just been seeing their own tunnel that they're actually in, the little bubble that they're just on this path, and they're trying to be like a good person. So when somebody says that, it's like it's just met with defensiveness, because it's sort of like, I don't know, we're definitely going to have to look into this topic and figure out more of why this happens, because I did used to feel that way when someone said, oh, you're privileged. I'd be like, well, actually, no, I'm not. I've like had loads of stuff. I'm not some silly little bimbo that's, you know, and I'd be constantly like thinking, no, I'm not privileged. Yeah.
I
and
think
it's like, why?
It must be because we have a negative association with the word privileged. I guess we must see it as people, for me, like someone who's spoiled, someone who's rich and had everything to them on
selfish, doesn't see any view but their own, and basically their way or the highway or something. I don't know, we see it as an insult.
Someone who's privileged would be a bad person, and we are not a bad person, so we can't accept that we are privileged. So I think in order to get around that, we need to understand what the real meaning of privilege is in the context of the world, like what it actually means. And when I was talking to you the other night about disabilities and things, because I don't know if everyone knows, but I have one leg shorter than the other, so I wear a prosthetic leg, and there's some things that I can't just go and do like a normal able-bodied person could just go and do, because these certain things are designed in a way for the able-bodied person but not for a disabled person. So for example, riding a bike, I can't just go into any bike shop in the world. Jem could go into any bike shop and get a bike. I can't do that because mine needs adapting. So I need to have special things fitted to it in order to be able to ride that bike. And that's because my body is not able-bodied. Another example is a car. I can't drive with my right leg because that's the leg that I have a prosthetic on, so I can't feel the pedal. So number one, I can't drive a manual, and I grew up in the UK and it's mostly manual cars that are sold. So number one, I couldn't just go into a car showroom and buy a manual car. And even when I went to buy a second-hand car, there's rarely automatic second-hand cars that are cheap in the UK, because it's usually like a BMW or a Range Rover. So when I came to buy my first car, I was like, how am I going to get a car, because I can't drive a manual, so I can't, like, there's all these second-hand cars that are manuals, but I can't drive that. So I had to go on the search for an automatic, which is very rare.
They're about 3,000 more expensive on average, aren't they?
So it was more expensive, and then in addition to that, I also had to get a pedal fitted for the left foot accelerator, because obviously the automatic is only one pedal, it doesn't have the clutch, but it's on the right side and I can't drive, so I had to have it flipped over. So this is what, for me, when I was trying to figure out what privilege is, I thought, have I ever experienced it on the other side? So not me having the privilege, but someone else having it. And in this context, if Jem was in my position, she could buy a car straight away. She passed the test, she goes to get buy a car, and she's fine. She doesn't have to go searching for different things, because the cars are designed for able-bodied people. That's a fact. They are designed for able-bodied people.
That's the thing though, Kels. What it is, what people will do, they'll think, oh, well, I can't get a car and I'm able-bodied because I can't afford a car anyway. So that's not me having a privilege. Then just because you've got one leg shorter than the other and you have to do that, they would say that. But what they're not getting is the fact that it's not the point.
Yeah,
the point is the fact that it's actually it's not about what you could or whatever. It's designed, the system is designed that you have not got the privilege to be able to just do it.
I have to go and do loads of research and go out of my way. Even when you go into a car showroom and say, oh, this is what I've got wrong with me, they have no idea where you can get at what to do. They have no idea. So I'm like, okay, so I had to go out my way. Another example would be someone in a wheelchair. And years ago, obviously now a lot of places have lifts.
It's a lot better, but it's not that much
years
better.
ago, buildings didn't have lifts. They had just stairs, and a lot of some buildings now just have stairs. So the way things are designed are for a specific type of person, a specific body, a specific, you know what I mean? So that's,
and this goes on loads of different levels.
It's not just, I'm just giving the example of a disabled person because this is what I've experienced, where someone's more privileged than me. But I will have that in other ways. I will be more privileged than other people for other reasons. One of which is when so I don't know if you've ever done this training, Jem, but it's really interesting. So it's called unconscious bias training.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have.
No, I've not.
So it's really good, and I recommend if anyone wants to do it, definitely do it. We did it at work with the diving festival, so it's an insurance diversity and inclusion festival.
Oh, that's brilliant!
Yeah, and we went, and basically there was loads of different examples they did, and it was to reveal people's unconscious biases, because biases that are like, oh, I'm not going to hire you because you're in a wheelchair, that's so obvious, and and
it might be harder for me because I might have to put a wheelchair ramp in or something like that. No one's
going to say that. No one nowadays, it's very, well, not no one, that's wrong, but it's the things that happen nowadays because people see these as wrong. It's like we can't be seen as bad or wrong in the eyes of other people. So it's more like the unconscious and covert ways that I think are harder to see, and that's what's keeping the kind of privilege system in place.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
because it's condoning. It's basically, a lot of people are condoning it because it's comfortable for them not to address it, because it's not affecting them. And that is why people who get a nerve hit when someone talks about privilege is because they are comfortable in their privilege. And they don't want to go outside that box because they could possibly lose their power and their bubble and their comfy life that suits them.
That's true. But when I did this unconscious bias training, one of the exercises was they had 4 pictures on a screen. And one was a guy in a suit, like a guy in a suit. I'll say it was a white guy in a suit, and there was a woman with 2 kids. They didn't explain who these people were or what or anything. And then there was this woman with the 2 kids, and then the next one was a young girl with long blonde hair, I think she had. like she looked very attractive and very, you know, very young. And then there was a guy next to on the end with, he was quite big and he had tattoos all over him, like down his arms and things like that. And they asked us to look at these pictures, just look at them. And then they said afterwards, okay, now I want you to explain to me which one you think would take the most time off work, right? So I said the woman with the kids, right? This is what I said, because she has kids.
I remember you telling me this.
Yeah, I've told you this already. So this was me. I just said it. Some of my colleagues said the young girl, and then some other people, I think, said the guy with the tattoos. No one said the
white male
with the white guy with the suit on. So this is really interesting. I was like, oh my God, that I just judged this person, and it's just a photo. Like, it was awful, but it was super, super interesting and so needed. The woman, the trainer, she said, why did you think that woman in the picture with 2 children was going to take the most time off work? So I said, because she has kids, like, she's obviously going to need, I wasn't saying it as it's a bad
it's just your
because, you know, people with, in my head, my bias, people with kids take more time off work. That's a prejudgment of people with kids I have, that I didn't even realize I had until I did this exercise. So she said to me, the trainer, and this is what shocked me. She said, but how do you know that woman with the 2 children isn't a nanny and at work? I was so embarrassed. I was literally like so embarrassed, because I thought, yeah, she's right. She said, you judged her as the mother of those 2 children, didn't you? And like, it was really bad. And I just felt awful, but it was good because it made me aware of my bias about people with children and having time off work. And so my colleagues who said the young girl said, because they've experienced in the past with a young girl that she took a lot of time off work. She was always off sick, and she did some pretty bad, like, you know, she phoned in sick when she was out partying, and then she got some random stuff. So she was genuinely, you know, taking the mick, really. But because they'd had that previous experience, when they saw the 4 pictures, they picked her, even though they don't know this person in the picture, but because of their previous experiences, they judged this girl as being the one to take the most time off work. And the people who picked the guy with the tattoos, they said because he doesn't seem professional, basically, because he had tattoos. So this training made me so aware that every single person has prejudgments and prejudices against other people that we're not aware of. Like, we are not aware of them. And in some cases, like for me, I would assume that people with kids would take more time off work, but I don't think that would affect me if I was in a position to hire someone. But how do I know that it wouldn't affect me? You know, especially if you're busy, if you've got a heavy workload and you're hiring someone because you need them there a lot, how do you know that unconscious bias in my mind of people with children, and this man or woman comes into the office and says, I have 4 kids or 3 kids or 2 kids or whatever, how do I know that that's not going to play a part in my hiring process? And that's, I think, another thing that when, for example, people come into my interview room and one of them's someone with kids and the other are not, if I have a bias against someone with kids because I think they're going to take more time off work. I might choose another person who doesn't have kids over them unconsciously because I'm unaware. But that is privilege. That person who doesn't have kids has a privilege over the person who does, because I have an unconscious bias against people who have children. So that's how it kind of plays into how I've seen it play into the bigger part of the system.
Yeah. And also, I think as well, if people aren't addressing their unconscious bias, it's going to play out in every part of their life, and they're going to be pushing this out onto everybody, their own children, their own family. It's going to go on from generation to generation and just push out, and people need to be aware of what their privileges are and what we are. We can't just keep staying in this bubble and being comfortable thinking that, oh, that's not affecting me, so I won't do anything about it, or oh, I'm fine, so why would I need to do anything about it. It's about, we need to actually start being aware of our privileges, and it's something that maybe should be taught in schools.
I agree. I think definitely the unconscious bias training is it's brilliant. Like, I think everyone should do that. I think it should be like mandatory in school, in companies, because it makes you aware of the privilege that you might have by looking a certain way or being a certain way over someone else who is being judged by other people. So it definitely that. And I think just kind of reading books, different types of books. What have you found helpful? Like, what kind of resources have you found helpful to learn more about this topic, Jem?
Well, obviously I've read lots of different books, and done lots of, like, chatted a lot to people and about different types of privilege, with working with like women and other races and stuff like that. And it's just a matter of being aware, I think, of our privileges, and realizing that there is certain things that certain people with privileges can do without having to take over and or deny, because sometimes denying our privileges can make, I think that's it's not a very good thing to do, really, because we have a duty, I think, as people, and especially me as a parent, to be aware of these things and learn. And I don't think it's something that we should be just turning a blind eye to, or excusing when people that get hurt, that, making excuses when other people are in a situation, like, oh, well, why are they not doing that when I do this and do that, and not being aware of your own privilege.
I
a lot of judgment going on.
Because I think that's the only way change can happen, when you admit there is you have a privilege. When you say, actually, this person doesn't get this opportunity because they are like this, and I get it because I'm like this. Whatever the difference is, it could be anything. When you admit that you have it, then that's when change can happen, because you can be like, why don't they have it? They should have.
Why don't they have it?
There's me.
Why not? Why is this not happening?
Because
and that's a system. There's a system in place.
To the surface, it's like you see it and you can change it then, but when it's hidden, you can't change it.
Yeah, it's hidden, but it's also, there's a lot of people that are pretending they can't see it because it suits their life. It's not happening to them. That's why they like to turn a blind eye, because they think, well, why would I be bothered about getting the roads flat because I'm not in a wheelchair. It's not going to affect me.
Yes.
You know, why would I be bothered about things happening in America? Because it's nothing to do with me or my bubble I'm in. But it actually is.
It is, because we all live on this planet, and I don't like, if people, I believe in the ripple effect, that what affects one eventually affects all. Like if there's hatred in one part of the world, it will eventually come across to every part. I genuinely believe in the ripple effect, and I believe in it the other way. If there's love, it can come across to everyone. So I don't, you can't say it doesn't affect you. It won't affect you now, right now, but eventually it will. And to be honest, if someone is being prejudiced, or you know, they're not getting the same rights as you, then it's for us, or whoever's the privileged person in
the privileged ones to speak out.
Like there's a book that an audio book that I'm listening to at the moment called Fragility by DiAngelo, and she talks about the women's vote when women couldn't vote at the time. And she's saying, like, the only reason women can now vote is because a man who had the privilege to vote said they could. And that's true. Women can't make, they couldn't vote. They can't decide that, oh yes, now we can vote, because if it was that easy, they'd just do it. They'd just like, yeah, we can vote. Like, what?
We had to wait for white males to tell us that we could vote.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll let them vote now, and we'll do this and do that.
That's the thing, that it's the people with the privilege that make the change. So it's when the men thought, actually, these women don't have the same rights as us, and they should have the same rights as us. It was when they decided that women should have the same rights that it happened. So it's only the privileged people that can make the change, because
they have the power.
If it was the people without the privilege, then they just give themselves the privilege. Like, why would they not? You know, if it was me, if I could decide that I wanted to be, you know, wanted a car, everyone to design cars for disabled.
Well, they were all made for people that had just one leg, and you're like, oh well, I don't. Please. Yeah, they don't care that. Oh, sorry, we can't use it now because you've made it like that. It's like, oh right, okay then. But it's the people in power with the privilege are the ones that need to look at themselves and actually think, what am I doing? And like, not be insulted, but actually think, what am I doing to actually, like, what am I doing with my privilege?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think it is scary. I think that one of the issues is that we do have this negative connotation with privilege, that we see it as some stuck up, spoiled, self.
Or has that been a deliberate? Has that happened deliberately? I wonder.
What do you mean? Has it happened deliberately?
Well, has that been made, constructed, and, you know, taught to us that it's a bad thing? Like it's a bad thing to be called out on. You know, where's that come from?
Yeah, it must have been, because why?
How dare you say that about me?
Yeah, like how would we? Why would we defend not being privileged if we thought privilege wasn't a bad thing?
Exactly, or it wasn't benefiting us in any way.
Yeah, because we'd only want to be seen as not privileged if we thought that was a good thing. Why would anyone want to be seen as not privileged if they thought it was a bad thing? They'd want to be seen as privileged then, if that was the good thing. So there's obviously not being privileged is seen as a good thing, and being privileged is seen as a bad thing. And that's not right, because you didn't ask to be privileged, so it's not, you've not done anything wrong by being privileged, but I think ignoring your privilege is kind of the thing that is not going to help. That's not going to help. So it's not, if you say I'm privileged, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting that you benefit from the way a country or a system is run. Like, I don't think there's anything
but
wrong
what's wrong is staying silent when other people are basically getting shit on because of the privilege, and everyone who's privileged is ignoring it and not actually calling it out. Now that's when there's a problem.
Yeah, and I think part of that stems from people seeing privilege as bad, but also maybe, like you said, part of
denial.
And like fear of their world being completely shaken up and turned upside down because maybe things will change.
Fear of feeling like the people that aren't privileged. They don't want to feel that the way they feel, so they try and justify it, when at the end of the day it's just not. It needs to be addressed. People who've got privilege, whether it's male privilege or whether it's a privilege over other people in different ways, whether the colour of your skin, it needs to be addressed, and you need to look at yourself and check yourself and see your privilege and actually think, what can I do?
I think one of the easiest ways to admit it is if a lift is broken in a building and you can walk up those stairs and there's someone who's sat at the bottom of the building and they can't get up those stairs, then you are privileged. So for me, that is one of the easiest ways to acknowledge your privilege if you are an able-bodied person, because not everyone can do that, and that's the way the building's designed is for people with legs. Do you know what I mean? And
if we do research, we'll see that the privilege is not just obviously with disability. The biggest privilege issue is the fact that the way society has been designed to actually suit a certain type of person, and that is what people are in denial. They're like, oh no, that's not happening nowadays, that doesn't happen. Well, it does, it's just covert.
It is, because so I was thinking about this the other night and I haven't read up on it at all, so this is not from knowledge, and I obviously can't back this up with anything because it's just kind of what came to my mind at the moment. Years and years ago, when laws were designed, when buildings were built, when people were renting out buildings, when all these things were happening years ago, I mean like hundreds of years ago, there was people that were doing that, people that were designing the buildings, people that were designing the roads, people that were designing the cars, people that were making the laws, making the rules, making the regulations. Now, these people looked a certain way, were a certain sex, because it can't have been women if women weren't even allowed to vote, so it would have been men. So when you're designing a law and you're the one who's obviously making the law at that time, it's designed in a way to benefit the people who they're thinking about, which is
themselves.
The other people who are like them. And that's why it's super, super important now to have different types of people in when you're designing a building, when you're designing the rules, the regulations, because they can see things that you can't. Like, I can't see something from a point of view of a man. Like, he can see it differently from me. I can't see it the same as someone who's able-bodied, as someone who's black, who's a different religion, all these things, like you need everyone to contribute, because everyone has different perspectives. And that's why I think the system was designed for a particular type of person, and over the years it's changed as we've got more people involved in the decision making, but it's still not there yet. It's still not where
it's still completely controlled by the same people that it always ever was.
So
and that's the problem.
There are things that have like changed along the way, but I think a lot of things as well, like we've just been told are wrong, like instead of actually understanding why it's wrong to you know, or why should we have different nationalities, different sexes on the board of a company? Why? There's a reason for it. That you don't just say, oh, because we need someone there to kind of make
our company look good.
There's a reason, because they can see something that you can't. Like even two different, me and you can see different things. So someone who's completely, you know, different, had a different upbringing, you know, they see the world in a different way, and maybe they have an input that can add to it. So it's completely necessary, but I don't feel that people fully understand that if we don't have a completely diverse like diversity in every area of life, we are losing. We're missing out on things. Like we're missing out on seeing the world through their eyes.
Exactly.
And I feel like we don't get told that. If you don't have women,
we've not been taught history has not been taught. It's been completely fabricated, and a lot of us have been taught a history that's not true, and we still to this day are like, well, it's taught to us to sort of keep these people up in power in exactly where they want to be, because everybody is sort of got their eyes closed to what is actually really been going on. But it's sort of like I think it's going to take a lot of us, one like step at a time, to just keep stepping up and say, no, this isn't right. But I think a lot of people are just so comfortable, or just turning a blind eye because it suits their narrative, that they don't want to call it out. So that's what it is. And I think that's the privilege of people. And that's why I think it's got such a bad name, because it's being used for bad rather than good.
But it's not in itself a
bad
thing. So that's what I want people to understand, that admitting you have privileges doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you've done something wrong, but you have to use it for good.
It exists.
And the first step to change is admitting that there's an imbalance, there's something wrong, and in order to admit that, we have to admit our privileges.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with that, with admitting that you're privileged, and then that can then in turn, you can use that for good. You can say, well, why do I get this but that person doesn't? That's not fair. We need to change that. You need to see the imbalance in order to change it. If you think that everyone's treated equally, you're not going to want to change anything. Why would you? Because you would think, well, everyone's treated equally, so what's there to change? You need to see it first before you change it.
People need to open their eyes, don't they?
I think it's
to privilege, and like maybe just look it up and like have a good research of it and what it actually means to them, and what it means and what it is. And like, because everyone says, oh, I want to be happy and I want the world to be great and whatever. Well, do something about it then. Use yourself, use what you've got.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the really good ways I would definitely recommend everyone do that unconscious bias training. I've actually asked, I want to do it again, so I've actually asked to do it again, because now I'm a bit more aware of what it is, and you know, I'll be able to see it in myself more now, I think, than I could before. So yeah, I think that everyone needs to do that training, because it's such an eye-opener. And I think one of the things is when I realized that I had an unconscious bias, I felt ashamed.
Yeah.
Like that's not right. It's not right to do that. And it's not. But if we judge ourselves for having an unconscious bias, we're not going to want to bring it to the surface. We're going to stuff it back down and ignore that it's even there. So another thing I would say is that if you do realize, you will become aware that you have an unconscious bias or prejudice in some way, to allow it to come to the surface, and accept that you have it, and accept that you know that you don't want
that it's your responsibility to change that,
and change it into something good, not to blame yourself and then just ignore it and stuff it back down, because that's not going to help anything. And I think that's one of the things that I learned from that training, is that I feel that when people realize they do have an unconscious bias or a prejudice, they're so scared of being seen as a bad person that they don't want to look at it, and they just throw it, push it down and ignore it. And I think what I did is, it's horrible to admit that you have it. It's not nice to say, yes, I did judge someone and I had an unconscious bias, or I have an unconscious bias. But once you acknowledge it, then when you see someone, so now when I see someone with children, I know in my mind I will judge them for having more time off work, but I'm aware of it. I can see it now. So I'm like, I just judged that person, and I can, it's in like the forefront. So now it's there for me to see. Do you know what I mean?
So you won't just automatically make a mistake when you could have just hired the best person for the job by just your unconscious bias.
Yes, exactly. So
you'll be more aware of it.
Aware of your biases. So that's the whole point of the unconscious bias training, is judge yourself and say you're a horrible person because you have bias and prejudice. It's to bring it to the surface so you're aware, so that when you're in a position of power. For example, you're hiring people, or you get to choose someone for a project. It might not be hiring someone, it might be between your colleagues. You're aware, this person's got tattoos, for example. I think he's not going to be reliable because that's my unconscious bias for someone with tattoos. Let me assess them properly and acknowledge that bias is there. And if you see it, then you're like, but if that wasn't there, then would I pick him? Yes, I would. So then if you're aware of it, you can change it. If you're not aware of it, you can't change it. So,
and I think that's what when people deny the privilege and they get hurt by it, it's because deep down they know that it's there, and it's been exposed, it's been called out, and they don't want to address it. And it's like a defense thing, and it's not. That is just as bad as being completely overt about other people. Your prejudice is just completely over. It's just as bad being a covert. It's even more dangerous, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's better to just acknowledge that it's there, whatever prejudice or bias you have.
Yeah.
Like I watched Red Table Talk. This was interesting, with Jada Smith, and she says she has a bias against white women with blonde hair. Yeah. So we all have them. This is the thing, and it's because something in her past,
triggers it.
That she got, but I think she got bullied by blonde white women basically as a kid and as she was growing up. So in her mind, they are not trustworthy, which and that's her unconscious bias that she's aware of it. So we all have them, and there's no point in denying it. It doesn't make you a bad person, but you have to admit that you have unconscious bias and prejudice. We all have them. We all have
it.
Yeah.
And it can also probably happen throughout our life, and you think, when a pattern happens, and then you think, oh, I realise that I'm starting to behave in this way, but why? Where's it coming from? We all have to sit there and ask ourselves, question things, and read and listen to other people, listen to what they're saying. Not, oh no, that's not happening, it's absolutely fine because I'm comfy. No, that's bullshit. You need to listen to people. We need to all do it. I need to do it. You need to do it. We all need to do it.
We do.
Definitely.
So is there any other kind of resources that you have on this topic, Jen, that you would want to share?
I think I'll probably save it for the next bit of this topic. We do this again and do a little bit of a follow-up, because I've got loads and loads and loads, so many resources and stuff that it's a bit too much to sort of put on. And I suppose because we've brushed over it really, haven't we? And we're talking about privilege, but there's a bigger picture that we're going to end up talking about eventually. And I think that maybe if we put some of this resources on the group, and people can have a look, and have a feed through of what might, they might be able to cherry pick out which ones they want to start with.
Definitely, that's a really good idea if you put them on there, and then people can just see which one they want to look up on. That would be.
Is there anything you want to say, Kels, about anything?
No, I think I've said. I think I've said everything. I think for me the biggest change that I have had in the last couple of weeks is if something triggers me, I'm asking myself why. Why
that's what I'm trying to do.
Word trigger me? Why does the word when someone says you have a privilege, why is that triggering to me? Because
is that still triggering to you?
No, not now.
It's not to me now.
A little bit, honestly, a little bit. But I know why. It's because I associate it with with someone who's selfish. That's I associate it with someone who's selfish. So for me, the only reason why I would deny that I had privilege is because I'm denying that I'm selfish. It's not the privilege, it's the underlying meaning. Whereas now I realise it doesn't mean that, because of I've listened to so many talks, and I've read books about it, I've read online. And even when I was talking to you about the disabled and able-bodied privilege, that was when it kind of clicked for me, and I was like,
oh yeah, when we had that discussion the other day.
Like Jem is privileged over me in that way, but she's not a selfish person because she's got privilege. And that's when it kind of clicked for me that okay, that's what it means. It doesn't mean selfish, it doesn't mean bad person, it just means that you benefit from the way the system is built.
Exactly.
And obviously once you admit you have the privilege, then we can
call it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but that's with listening to you as well, and obviously growing up with around you, I can see that the privilege and the, you know, the stuff that you've had to put up with that. And I think sometimes when we're in a bubble and maybe we're not around any disabled people or other
you
different
wouldn't
people,
know. You wouldn't.
we don't notice and we don't see it because we're like, oh no, it's not happening, but it is happening because you need to listen.
That's it, Gemma. I was just going to say, like what you were saying about listening. Even if you get triggered by what someone's saying, stay and listen to what they've got to say, because it's very hard to listen to someone when you feel triggered in that moment. So maybe go away.
Just triggered.
And maybe go away and do some meditation, or, you know, breathing exercises, or the inner bonding process, and then go back, because you're right, Jem.
Yeah, sorry, she just wants to say hello.
Hello, you're right.
Sorry.
So that's all I would say, that if something is triggering you in relation to privilege, then go inside and ask yourself why that's triggering to you. What are you telling yourself about privilege? You know, are you judging yourself, whatever it is? And like you said, I think one of the really key points is to just listen to people, listen to their experience, because you might think something, like you might think something doesn't exist, but you're not the one who has experienced
living it.
So how can you say it doesn't exist? Like,
exactly.
You just can't. Like you
because you come in from a place of privilege, so you can't tell somebody that they've not experienced that when it's their lived experience.
Exactly. So I think that's what I've been doing. I've been just listening to people's stories, to be honest. And over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of stories coming out. And one of the reasons I feel that people don't maybe realize, or they're ignorant to the fact that they have privilege, is because people don't share the stories of the non-privilege. You know what I mean? Like, people don't go and broadcast, oh, this person got treated this way and I didn't get treated the same way, or I didn't have the same advantage or privilege as this person. Like, people don't go and broadcast these things. It just it rarely happens. So,
or if they do, they get minimized and discarded, and then they don't want to speak out because no one's listening.
Exactly. So I think, like you said, Jem, the best thing to do is just listen to someone else's experience. Just listen. Okay. Well, this is a good chat. It was really good and helpful. So we're not here next week, because I am doing an inner bonding intensive, and Jem has some work and yoga training that she has to do. So this is the end of our first series. So we'll be back hopefully the following week after next Thursday, with a new topic and new season. So exciting stuff.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.